This episode of One-on-One with Mitch Lafon is brought to you by the Heavy Montreal Festival, taking place August 9th and 10th at Parc Jean-Drapeau in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And this year features performances by Metallica, Slayer, The Offspring, Lamb of God, Anthrax, Twisted Sister, and many, many more. For more about Heavy Montreal, visit heavymontreal.com. And welcome back to another episode of One-on-One. And of course, I'm your host, Mitch Lafon. And this week, Russ Dwarf of the Killer Dwarves is out on tour. So I've brought in Gordon. Gordon, your last name is, I always want to say Gerbert, like the baby food.
Like the baby food. I was waiting for you to screw it up.
It's programmed into my head.
When you go do the Canadian French version,
yeah,
Gebert.
Gordon Gerbert.
Gordon G.D. Gerbert.
I prefer G4.
G4, yeah. I know people where they're going to screw up my name, they call me 4Gs, G4.
G4. Well, it's because back in the day, you had a G4 Productions, so I'm used to the G4. That's how I remember you the most.
Right.
But there we go. So Kiss fans out there, we've got Gordon. Of course, Gordon has written a couple of books that some might deem controversial in the Kiss world, but, it is what it is.
Just a little bit, slightly controversial.
But this week we're not talking Kiss books. We're not talking controversy. We're in fact just talking Jean Beauvoir, who is the guest this week. And I sat down with Jean for an hour and some dust interview where he goes over the Plasmatics and working with Kiss on Asylum and on Animalize and all that wonderful stuff. And of course. Gordon, you've had a chance to listen to it. What were your first impressions?
Yeah, it was great. And Jean, I have an indirect connection with. Of course, in the music industry, we're all incestuous.
Yeah.
But Jean worked with my friend Mike Ciotto, drummer, okay. And Mike Ciotto was in a band called From the Fire, which was a big '80s band.
Right.
And Mike Ciotto loved John. He thought he was so talented, such a great guy and a great talent. And he could see where all John's success came from because the guy's great.
He is great. He's absolutely fantastic. Now,
yeah.
We talk, like I said, a lot about the Plasmatics, and Jean talks about his dad leaving and his parents and all that. But you were sort of on the other side of the Kiss world in the '80s with your connection to Ace Frehley. What were your thoughts of Animalized?
It was weird because I hate to say this on your show. I wasn't like an outright avid raving Kiss fan, So, but my connection was with Ace and I worked with Ace and I know all the Frehley's Comet stuff inside out because I worked on the albums and everything. So my connection, with the material was through Ace's eyes.
Okay.
Like when an album came out or a tour came out. Ace would go, this sucks. He criticized. He would criticize Paul. He would criticize Gene, and I'd hear it through Ace. I know I'm taking a little turn off from what your connection was. Remember the song, the Heart song? What was the song that Ace did and Kiss did?
Hide Your Heart.
Hide Your Heart. That was it. Thank you.
And Bonnie Tyler and Molly Hatchet.
Right. All these people did all different versions of Hide Your Heart.
Pretty much all in the same 1 month period, too.
Yeah, I know. And it was really weird because Ace recorded it, and it just happened. Like, he didn't know Kiss was recording it.
Right.
It was like fate. It was weird because everybody thinks Kiss recorded it or Ace recorded it just to bust each other's balls. You know what I'm saying? Like you found out, through the grapevine. Oh, Hide Your Heart's on the album, and the other guy. No, it was just a weird coincidence that the two did it. I actually like Ace's version. I'll actually say that over the Kiss version. What do you think?
It depends on the mood I'm in. There are some times when I'm in a very Ace Frehley mood and I want to hear Shock Me and Rocket Ride, and I throw in Hide Your Heart into the playlist, and I love it. And there are other times when I'm more in a Kiss mood, and I love that. But the funny thing is I also like the Molly Hatchet version. The Bonnie Tyler version, maybe not so much, but it just goes to show that it must be a great song if all these different artists with their different voices and different arrangements can all make it sound like a good song.
Right, yeah. A great, well, it was written by Desmond Child, right?
Was that one Desmond or was that one Holly Hunter? It might have been
Holly Knight.
Holly
I think
Knight.
it was Holly Knight and Desmond Child. And I don't know if Paul was in on this, writing it.
Probably was.
Yeah, so it might have been a Paul Stanley, Desmond Child, Holly Knight collaboration. We got to look that up on the internet. And then I think Paul did write it, but why would Ace choose that song to play if Paul Stanley? I'm asking that question right now after all these years.
You know, that's something we need to explore at some point. I would imagine, you know, when you write a song and it gets into the hands of your publishers and all this, they might have just been shopping the song and they might have thought maybe it's not Kiss-worthy. Now, of course, listen, this is all guessing.
Right.
But they might have thought it was not Kiss-worthy song, and so they shopped it out to a bunch of people, and whoever represented Molly Hatchet or the band themselves and Bonnie, they might have just said, hey, let's pick up this song and do it. And, you know.
A great song is a great song.
It's a great song.
Yeah. But I'll give you the reason why I like Hide Your Heart, Ace's version. I like all the big vocals in it.
Oh, yeah.
I think the Kiss version, like the background vocals weren't big enough. They were kind of thin.
Right.
And Ace had a bigger, well, no, I wouldn't call it the wall of sound, but a bigger, you know, production to it.
Sure. Well, let's not forget, Hot in the Shade was just 24-track demos. They weren't actually a recording session, right?
Right.
I guess that's where Ace's version has the advantage that he actually went into a studio and worked it up.
Right, yeah, and he took his time to it. That was the Trouble Walking album, yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was on the Trouble Walking album, and then he had access to all these guys. I mean, Sebastian Bach, all the guys from Skid Row were on it. Peter Criss, I mean, doing vocals and stuff. So he had, and what's his name from the Blues Magoos was on it also.
I'm trying to think. That wasn't a...
Yeah, it's the guy's name. See, it's bad. I'm getting old.
See, we've all gotten old. But let's get back to Jean here for a second.
Yeah,
He also talks about Asylum, and we hit upon those outrageous outfits that Kiss were wearing. And listen, you know, when you think of Gene and stuff with the makeup and the blood and the boots, and then we say that his outfit is outrageous, they got to be really out there. What did you think of that? And did you ever sit back with Ace and look at Gene in those sequins and go, what the hell's wrong with B. Arthur?
What the hell is he wearing?
Yeah.
But when the Asylum album came out, it was more that I remember to this day was Bruce Kulick was playing. I think he debuted on that album. Was that the first album he played on?
Listen, he played... Rumors have it that he might have appeared a bit somewhere in there on Creatures of the Night, and rumors have it that he played on Animalize and blah, blah. But the one where he was in the band and it was his baby.
Right, it's official. They could say Bruce Kulick, you know, with Kiss on the Asylum album. And I knew Bruce from the days of, in the New York.
Blackjack.
Yeah, Blackjack, and in the New York area because he played with all the same musicians I played with. In the we called it the tri-state area, Jersey, Connecticut, New York, and all the club bands around here. And Bruce was a hot shot, great guitar player in the area.
Oh, he absolutely was. Now, what we didn't know at the time is of Asylum and of Animalize was that it wasn't Gene Simmons on bass most of the time. We had Jean Beauvoir and there was other people.
Right.
So we got a new guitarist in Bruce Kulick, but we also got a new bassist in Jean Beauvoir. And so let's sit back and listen to this sort of 1 hour conversation with Jean as he goes through his history, and he's extremely honest about his relationship with his father, which went through its ups and downs. But who doesn't have that in their life, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go. So here we are. Here's Jean Beauvoir. And we're here with Jean Beauvoir today. How are you doing, Jean?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
Good. It's been way too long since we've last spoke. Now, You know, Jean, what I find remarkable about you is your sort of discography, your production credits, your songwriting. Um,
Thank you.
it's every style, it's sort of every artist, and it's. So let me throw a few names at you because here's what I find remarkable at the end of this list. I'll tell you what I find really remarkable. You've done stuff with NSync, Doro
Yeah.
Pesh, Ramones,
Yeah.
John
Hmm.
Waite, Little Steven, Debbie Harry, but the
Yep.
one thing that of course the Plasmatics. Let's not. I'm forgetting the
Right.
real. Let's not. And of course your band, Crown of Thorns. But what I find remarkable about all these names, you look at those names, and when people get Jean Beauvoir on the phone, they want to talk to you about Kiss, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What is it? What is it about that band that they can look through all these production credits and go, "Oh, Kiss. Got to ask him about Kiss. Why is Kiss so special?"
Well, they definitely are a special band. I think a lot of the artists that you mentioned, obviously are special, especially the Ramones, for example.
Yeah.
A very special group. And Kiss is very special just because they are innovators. They created something way, way, way back that has transcended time and is still here up till today. Musically, their accomplishments are unprecedented. They made so many albums in all these years. They've toured so long, and they've stayed relevant up till now. And sometimes it's almost like they start to go away for a while, and people don't realize the importance of the group. And then even 40 years later, then people really, really don't realize the importance of the group, which is why they were inducted into the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's one thing that I find, which I'm proud of, is that people like Kiss that I've worked with finally get recognized for what they've for everything that they've accomplished, for all the hard work that they've put in. But the band's it's just a remarkable concept. It's not just a band.
No, they're not just a
more.
band. And of course, since you played bass on 2 of their albums, I think you should have been inducted as well, quite frankly. Right? But
we should all be inducted. Everybody who's involved somehow should be somehow inducted.
Inducted. But I want to get into the Kiss stuff in more detail just a little later. But my first question, though, is again, when you look at this, for the lack of a better word, this CV, this collection of credits, how as a producer is it to or how do you take these different styles of music and produce the Ramones compared to, Debbie Harry or John Waite, bands that how do you approach them in terms of an artist?
Well, I mean, I've always been pretty prolific. Actually, I still write quite a bit, but especially at the time where I was doing those bands, I was just doing so much stuff, and I had so many ideas all the time, and just didn't have enough outlets for them. So I think that working with other artists was really a perfect outlet for me, because it enabled me to jump into all these other worlds. When for your own album, you had 12 slots for your album, and then that's it. Especially those days, you're making an album a year or not even. So then I said, well, what do I do with all these other ideas? But I think the thing that I found most exciting about working with these different artists is that you get a chance to become a member of that group almost for the moment that you're working. So it's like if you're working with Kiss, it's like an actor. It's like you just got a new role, and your role is the 5th member of Kiss and helping them realize their vision. So Paul's trying to get something across when he's writing a song, and he wants help doing that. But it's got to be within his thing. You know what I mean? So I find that to be exciting, because it's almost like you got to jump into your skin for a minute. You got to think about what's this band about. You got to make believe you're on stage with them. You have to, listen to their album, see what they're about. What are they talking about? What are they, how do they deliver things to people? And it gives you a chance to, play that role for a while. And then you do that with Kiss. And all of a sudden, you're working with the Ramones. And they say, oh, this is cool. This is kind of like, my background, Plasmatics, CBGBs, downtown, Lower East Side, you know what I mean? And you get into that whole vibe. And,
Right.
I started as a punk, so it's kind of, well, same thing. You get into that world, you get to work with people like Dee Dee and Joey, and who are, such colorful characters, so different from each other, and they actually, and you need to somehow, in their case, producing and writing, and we did a lot of work together, to try to get across their message, which sometimes is not very clear. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's contradictory. You have Dee Dee wants to get something across that's very different than Joey, that's very different than Johnny, and then the record company says, you have to, corral all these guys together and get us what we want. And good luck with that.
Yeah, that must have been tough with the Ramones, because they were sort of a, and I don't want to sound cliche, but I have no choice, but they were sort of an anti-establishment band, and yet they sort of wrote really catchy pop tunes when you think about it, right?
That's right. And I think it's just a balance of who they were. Dee Dee, was, he was a very unique writer and character and everything, and definitely not a pop guy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And at the same time, Joey really liked very musical things. He loved pianos, he loved strings, he loved, classical things, so that's what he liked. And Johnny was just a straight ahead, like rock guitarist. That was his thing. So it was interesting that each character, when you kind of put all the pieces together, then the producer comes in, you have to kind of find a blend of things that they find interesting, but kind of satisfies, each one of their, things that they're trying to get across. So it's quite a challenge. No doubt.
Yeah. Let's look at that first band of yours with Wendy O. Williams. And since you just said, the Ramones were trying to get across, what were the Plasmatics trying to get across? I mean, here you are, you're coming out of the disco age, and of course are the big arena acts, your Kisses and your Alice Coopers and your Aerosmiths. And what were the Plasmatics trying to create?
Well, I'll tell you, the Plasmatics were, you mentioned anti-establishment. That's definitely what the Plasmatics was. I mean, there's no doubt. And that's why when I first joined the group, I found it to be so fitting, because I was kind of like an outcast myself, I was a black guy who grew up on Long Island in an all-white neighborhood, but at the same time, I liked different things I'm supposed to like. I liked rock music. I liked punk, but I should have been listening to only R&B. You know what I mean? So yeah. I was, and there was a lot of things. I was different. I was kind of thrown out of my house very young. Okay. Because my dad was against me playing music, and one day,
was he against playing music, or was he against the kind of music you were? I mean, had you been the next Smokey Robinson, would he have had a problem with it?
Well, the truth is, it was just music in general. I was very strict, conservative upbringing. My dad's from Haiti. Okay. And at the beginning, they loved that I put so much energy, because I was persistent about it. And I started 11 years old, starting to mess around with things. And by 13, I was like junior high school rock band. I had my own band. I was already starting to get things going. So I think at that point he was digging it, because he said, great, the guy's motivated. Great to see him practicing and improving. And then by 14, I had a little enterprise. I was already playing every weekend, coming home late.
Oh, really?
And then I started going on the road with Gary U.S. Bonds, by 15. So then I'm flying to Vegas and back and forth. And then he, at that point he said, okay, it's going a little too far now, because in his mind he was like, the only way you're really going to make money is to be a doctor, lawyer, dentist. And there were no musicians in Haiti who actually made money.
Let me ask you about how you had permission to do that, because when you think about it, a 15-year-old is, for the lack of a better word, the property of his parents. They're not emancipated until they're 18, or they're not. How did Gary U.S. Bonds buy you a ticket and fly you out of state without your dad's permission?
Well, my mom was, they actually, at the beginning they were into it. But then after a while, my dad started to feel, at first they were like, oh, okay, well, he's starting to do some things. He's enterprising. He's making some money. But then, and of course, Gary at the beginning didn't know how old I was, because I told him I was 18. And then the first time he took us out, we actually drove to Florida to go meet him. And one day he comes into my room, and he used to call me Boo Boo. And he says, Boo Boo, I just got off the phone with your mom. and you got to go back to school.
That's so rock and roll. Right? Can you just imagine? Hey, Paul Stanley, your mom's on the phone. She says you got to get back to class.
And he says, I know it's summertime, and you think that you've made it, and this is because at that point I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
But you got SATs to prepare for. That's funny.
That's right. So he says, you can still play with me, you can still do stuff, but you got to go back. Come school year starts, you got to go back, and you come play with me on the weekends, or we'll work it out every once in a while. I'll get you out a day early from school or something. And I said, okay. And we did that actually for another year or so, Wow. And then I ended up, then I was actually out of the house anyways because my dad just wasn't into it. He was just like, my dad was a very black and white guy. It's like one day he was really into it, and then the next day he just walked in and he says, okay, as of tomorrow, I don't want to see any instruments in this house anymore. None. Everything goes. Wow. And he said, so it's either that or you go.
Did
and
you?
I said, okay.
And I don't mean to pry in your private life, but did you ever reconcile that as you got older? Did your dad, when you were like 40, come to you and say, I made some mistakes? Or is that one of those sort of, okay. At least
when
that's
I had
something.
my first hit, it took a long time, actually. We didn't speak. When I left then, I didn't speak to my father till I had my first hit, Feel the Heat. After that happened, which was probably early 20s, or something, or mid 20s. So finally, at that point, I called him.
So for a decade,
Haiti. Literally, we didn't speak. I kept in touch with my mom, but my dad, he didn't want to know anything about it.
Wow, that's got to be painful. Okay.
It was crazy. So, but then he said exactly what you said. One day, I was kind of, maybe it's showing off a little bit, but, I had my hit. I sent a limo to pick him up at the airport, and my driver, blah, blah, blah. And then he comes to the house, and then after we spent a little time together, he was like, you have to understand, I just didn't realize that there was this potential for this business we wanted to do. He said, I'm from Haiti. We don't know any better. For us, it's doctors, dentists, lawyers. There are very few professions, engineer. And he said that I just didn't want to, end up on the street playing in the subway. So, and that was it.
I can imagine that when you went through it, there must have been a lot of anger and resentment. But when you look at it now, you sort of have to say, well, listen, I can't blame him. He was probably looking out for my best interest, right?
Yeah, he was. That's the way it is. I guess it's a tough job for parents because you just never know. I mean, you think about, especially look at the world now. I mean, kids, look at the guy who started Facebook, or people are doing all kinds of things, music, like crazy businesses that are so unorthodox, and they're making millions of dollars doing it. So it gets to the point where you don't know what's the right way to go.
You don't know what's the right way. And you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of people who tried different versions of Facebooks who failed miserably and are probably sleeping, down by the subway somewhere. And those stories you don't hear about. So it's tough for parents. So when you join the Plasmatics and Wendy does what Wendy does, how did Mom take that? Was she a little shocked by that?
Well, she was the only one who actually, my dad was out of the loop at that point because, like I said, we didn't actually speak till my first solo stuff. So he missed that whole Plasmatics era. My mom came to one thing. She thought it was completely crazy. Everybody was, the show was so wild, and we were just so wild. We just looked like a bunch of nuts, sort of jumping around with mohawks and cars blowing up and, all the stuff that we used to do. It was just, it was crazy. But I enjoyed it, and for me, it was, it was really an opportunity to be a misfit, and be, and be comfortable being. I don't know if misfit's the right word, but basically, you were rebellious.
Yeah.
You wanted to do whatever you wanted to do. I believed in racelessness. The whole blonde mohawk thing was like, I was kind of like, I don't have to have black hair because I'm black. I don't have to have this because I'm this. I don't have to play that because I'm that. I really felt that way. And that was a perfect opportunity. There was such weird characters in that group that I could just make my own character. That's right. It was a good experience.
You just mentioned the word black guy. Was there any kind of tension from the Plasmatic crowd of going, hey, rock is white, or was there any kind of nonsense like that? And I really mean the nonsense. Or were you accepted?
To be honest with you, there was none. And
okay.
Where it really came from were other blacks. Never
really?
From the opposite.
Okay.
Absolutely. I never felt any tension. I was totally accepted. It was great. But one thing that I felt it started to do is it started opening doors and opening the minds of whatever other, black, Americans that basically wanted to, who liked rock, but would never do it. Everything was very segregated back in those days. Everything was like, you listen to that, you listen to that, you do this is what your friends do. But at the time I'd notice in the audience that I'd see 4 black people with motorcycle jackets. Then I'd see 12. Then I'd see 30. Then I'd see, and so I think I started to look at this. I said, this is starting something, because I think for other musicians, for just people in general, it's maybe broadening people's horizons, that everybody can do what they want to do. Don't feel that you're pigeonholed and you have to be told who to be and.
Yeah, and that's how it should be in music. Right. Music is all about being free, and it's supposed to be liberating and stuff like that. It's not supposed to be these little boxes. It's, and record companies love, or at least back in the day, love to put you in a little box, right? You're this kind of artist.
That's right. Well, the record companies had a hard time. That's later on in the story. We'll get into that because this story continued. Because that was the door opener at the beginning. And you got to remember, I had a blonde mohawk back in those days, and we're in the early 80s. And now you look on TV and you've got, a lot of black people with blonde hair. I just saw, matter of fact, an interesting thing. Sly Stone went on the Grammys with a blonde mohawk some years ago, And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I was even happier to see that they wrote in the LA Weekly, Sly Stone channels Jean Beauvoir from the Plasmatics. I was like, that's a compliment.
That's great.
I was a huge fan of Sly Stone,
It took 30 years to be recognized, but they got it. They got it. But I look at it, and it was, at that time there was nobody doing that. So especially from blacks felt that they resented me, with a blonde mohawk, because they felt, so what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be something that you're not? Are you trying to be white? I said, no. I'm whatever I want to be. I believe in racelessness. Everybody can do whatever they want to do. Yeah. That's where the world's going to go, as far as I'm concerned. And they didn't really buy it too much. It was very difficult, but it was always from black people, not from whites. Believe it or not. So from this experience with the Plasmatics and working with Wendy, at some point in about 83, 84, she goes off and does this Wow album that has Eric Carr and Gene Simmons and all these people around the Kiss world, Adam Mitchell, Mitch Weissman. Is that where you met Paul Stanley?
No, because actually, let me see. What year I met Paul? I must have met him around 83. I think I met him right after I left the Plasmatics.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the exact time frame, because somebody just sent me some other pictures of us, and I could tell my mohawk changed throughout the years. Like, I have to look at the years by what my mohawk looked like at the time.
That's my 82 mohawk. That's my 83 mohawk.
That's right.
Exactly right.
In 1982, I was playing with Little Steven.
Right,
82, 83. So I met him probably around that time, even before, because Paul and I just met in a club. I mean, I was just, it was kind of a dance club in New York. If I'm not mistaken, it was called, what was the name of that club?
Wasn't Studio 54? No.
No, it was just I can't remember the name of the club. It was like a place that looked like a little diner downtown, and everybody used to go hang out there. It was like New York had some really interesting pockets of people where everybody would hang out together, actors, actresses, authors, rock stars, rockers, whatever. Everybody would all hang out at this kind of dance club. And that's when I met Paul. He just came over to me one day and he said, "Hey, you're Jean from the Plasmatics." I said, "Yeah." And at first I didn't recognize him because I never seen him.
Your first question was, wait, Paul knows the Plasmatics? Wow.
Well, at the time, you got to remember, the Plasmatics in 1980, by 1981,
yeah,
everybody knew the Plasmatics because the Plasmatics
you know what?
were.
You're absolutely right, because at that time I was 1980. I was 12, and this was before MTV and before much music up in Canada, and I knew who the Plasmatics were. And
yeah,
I don't know how I knew, but I remember there was, they were driving a bus through a bank of TV screens eventually, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff, and it filtered through somehow. I don't know.
Well, you know what it was? Is it was an interesting thing. The manager was pretty interesting because he managed to he bypassed a lot of the music press, but he got all the real press. So basically, we were like the eyewitness news commercial in America. You know?
You really were.
I mean, because it was just so wild, everything. Every town we got to, they tried to arrest us, so we'd end up in every daily paper in every town. So it was like we got more press than the Stones in the States, because it wasn't music-based. It was just, it's just everywhere. Yeah. So you couldn't escape it. And he was really good at manipulating press, and as he used to put it, throwing dust up in the air, and everybody starts to wonder, where's that dust coming from? Yeah. And he was a master at that. So at that point, everybody knew the group, and was, always everybody was excited to see what is this all about? What are they going to blow up? It wasn't really based on, I love that last hit.
Yeah. So No, absolutely. But let me get back to this Paul story. I want to get into the Kiss story a little bit here. So Paul walks over to you and says, "Hey, I'm Paul from Kiss, and you're the guy from the Plasmatics." Okay, great. But how does that end up with you being on 2 albums, playing bass, writing songs?
Okay. Well, basically, we just started talking, and and obviously I was very impressed because I've been a huge Kiss fan before, with Kiss posters on my walls, and they were one of the reasons why I even got into rock and roll in the first place. So we're just talking. We just hit it off. We just got along. We just going back and forth, and we just exchanged numbers. And he said, "Oh, let's get together. Whatever, we'll go hang out." And then that's what we started to do. We just would hang out. We'd go out to clubs. We'd go, to different concerts, whatever. He was doing something, or he was going to the studio. He'd call me. If I was doing something, I'd call him. Literally, all the time. Every week we were doing something. Wow. We actually didn't write a song probably for a year.
At this point, because, as we've read all the Paul Stanley books and the Gene Simmons books and all this, the story is pretty clear that at that time, sort of, Gene had sort of checked out of Kiss and was busy with other things. Did Paul ever confide any of that stuff at you and say, "Listen, my partner is not really my partner anymore, and I need some help"?
No, I didn't. I never saw that, to be honest with you. I hear this over and over again about this thing, about Gene checking out.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest, I was there, and I don't remember all this checking out, because I saw Gene all the time. And I just think that the way they had things set up, it was just split up. Just the way the relationship was set up. Gene did his portion of Kiss. Paul did his portion of Kiss. And they did it separately. Gene was writing. If I'm not mistaken, Gene had X amount of songs that he had to deliver for the record. Right. He did it his way, with his people, his productions, his co-writers, whatever. Okay. And Paul did his thing.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. You've been in a band. You know what bands are like. Did that strike you as peculiar, that here's this band and they're not writing together? It's basically half a Gene solo album and half a Paul solo album. There's not really a Kiss album going on?
That's a good point. But I understood it because I just kind of assumed probably don't get along great. And to avoid any complications or, I don't like that riff, I don't like this. And so, it was actually pretty diplomatic. I mean, to be honest with you, it's almost like everybody has to find their own solution. Some bands have to say, okay, everything that gets written, no matter what anybody contributes, we split it 4 ways. That's some people's solutions, and I think for Paul and Gene, it's just like, you go do your half, I do my half, and then we'll come together at the end. Maybe we work together for the artwork, and we work together for this, but this way you get to be creative in your way. You're not going to have me up your ass saying, well, I don't like that riff, Gene, because it's not your business. Go do your song.
So the first song that you wrote that appears on a Kiss album is "Thrills in the Night." Is this a song that you had lying around in a vault somewhere, or is it something that Paul brought to you and you sort of tweaked, or how does that song come together?
We wrote it from scratch.
Okay.
So basically, we were just hanging around at his house one day, or whatever, eating Chinese food. I don't know what we were doing. And next thing you know, he'd just pull out a guitar and started playing something. I started playing something, went back and forth, riff start, and that's it. We tried some melodies on it. Next thing you know, we had the makings of our first song.
I got to tell you, you make songwriting sound so easy. It sounds as though that I could just show up at your house tomorrow morning and we could just hang out and we'd have a song by the end of the day. It's not that easy, is it? I got to be honest with you. It's that easy?
Well, maybe not to complete it.
Okay.
Maybe not to complete it. But when it's flowing,
right?
When it's flowing, I think they're probably some of the best songs I've written. As far as, let's put it this way, as far as the actual song and melody, in 5 minutes.
Really? Well, I got to say, as somebody from the outside who just doesn't have these talents to songwrite and stuff like that, I just have such a respect for guys like you and for Gene and for Paul who can write a song, get their ideas on paper, and you make it sound so simple, and yet I can tell you it's not, because I can't do it.
Well, like I said, this is the first step. Like, for example, for years of writing, or even ideas that I'd throw to Paul or do whatever, I'd do it on a phone. Or back in those days, I used to call my answering machine when I had an idea. I'd stop on the corner to a payphone, and I'd call it to my answering machine, and I'd hum what I heard. Here's the chorus. This is the chorus melody. This is the verse. That's it. Okay. So now you've got your first step. But then you've got to go write the lyrics.
Right.
Now, with Paul and I, that took longer. So then once we had the basic idea of the song, then, we'd say, okay, let's get together tomorrow or whenever we're both available to work on lyrics. And we'd work on some lyrics, even though you might look at lyrics and say, well, yeah, those are simple. I mean, but Paul had some very specific ideas of what he wanted to get across for a Kiss record.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is it harder to write lyrics because they're not free-flowing, because Kiss has to have a certain lyrical content for it to be sort of a Kiss song? Is that sort of the thing where you have to tailor it to make it a Kiss song?
Yeah, I think it's the case a lot of times, because when you're working with another artist as a co-writer, you're trying, like I said earlier, you're trying to get into what it is that they're trying to deliver, who they are. And Paul was pretty strategic with that. He was like, the Kiss album's got to be this. And he just had something in his head. And it's not like he'd always make it that clear, but he'd know when that needle went to the middle. You know what I'm saying? So you have to keep on, going back and forth. And, if it's my album, then it's my needle that counts.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But when it's his album, it's different. You can contribute ideas and keep going. Well, what if we say this? Oh, I like that. Well, no, I don't really like that. Oh, and then you can go back and forth and, until you actually tweak it and end up where he feels, okay, we're done. I've got it.
Were the songs being inspected, for the lack of a better word, by Gene as well, or were you just you and Paul writing and that was it? Didn't matter.
That was it. That was pretty much it.
So you've written the song and you ship Paul off and you go, all right, thank you for writing with me. And then you get a call or you're hanging in the studio and he says, well, how about playing bass on it? Do you not say, well, doesn't Kiss already have a bass player?
Well, the way it happened, it was even, again, that whole relationship was very casual. Right. So it was, I don't think I get somewhat, you get a call coming to the studio. I was in the studio. So it was one of those things where if Paul was recording, since we were like hanging out, we'd say, okay, we're going to go to this thing that's happening tonight over at, this club, or this one's playing tonight. Yeah, but I'm going to be in the studio from 2 till 6. Okay. Right. Why don't you come by? I'll come by. So I'll come, I hang out for 4 or 5 hours before. We hang out. I remember back in those days, you had the studios with the little lounge in the back. And so it was more of a hang, than it is now. People would hang at the studio.
Yeah, which is a lot of fun to do
with the guys. Yes, exactly. I'd be hanging with the guys. We'd be doing whatever. And then Paul would say, you know what? Why don't you come try something on this Thrills in the Night? Because I did the original demo already. When we wrote Thrills in the Night, we demo it on this little 4-track, which actually was pretty time-consuming because you have to bounce things over and over again to try to get you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
thank God for Pro Tools.
So, tell me about it. You know, you have to sit in the thing, and by the time you bounce it 5 times, you listen back, and the whole thing sounds like
exactly.
And you go, I hear the song somewhere in there.
Do you have that demo somewhere?
I don't actually. I wish I did.
So do I.
I don't. Paul would have probably had that because he had, it was his little Plasmatics or whatever that 4-track was that we were using at the time.
So you're hanging at the studio, and they say, hey, we need a bass player. Oh, John's sitting over there. Jean's over there. Come on in and play. Is that basically how it works out?
Yeah, it was more like they liked the way the demo sounded.
Okay.
Because I played bass on the demo.
Right.
So it's like, it had a certain feel. So, of course, this is something that Gene would have to be into, too. So Gene was listening, and he'd say, it might have been, I don't remember exactly, it might have even been Gene who said, hey, Beauvoir, why don't you just play on this? The feel is good, it's happening, and, just do it. He was very loose about that stuff. And he'd be at the studio.
Okay.
So he was very cool about it. And that's why I ended up playing on a few songs.
Well, listen, I know of 3, and hopefully by the time we're done, you're going to tell me you played on all 9. But
no.
But you also did Get All You Can Take and Under the Gun.
Yes.
How did those come about? I mean, you didn't write them. I'm assuming you're not on the demos. You're just hanging out, and they say, "Listen, we got this Under the Gun song. You want to just play bass on it?" Is that basically just how it works? Yeah,
basically. Okay. Especially at that time, I was playing bass a lot. I just come out of the thing with, I think I might have been playing with Steven at the time from the Plasmatics, so I was pretty quick, with bass and had it pretty together. So I probably could just learn it pretty quickly and get it together and play on it. But I think that Gene liked a feeling that I had on the songs, and I think that's why he supported the thing, because those songs have a little bit of this groove thing that's just something, and that's it. I mean, I do that stuff sometimes now. I'll have somebody has a certain feeling for something. I'll tell them, yeah, go ahead. Why don't you play it?
Now, I'll say this, by the way. Under the Gun is, to me, one of my favorite sort of gem Kiss songs, these undiscovered gems that they have. I think that's a great song. That and I've Had Enough from that album are 2 of these songs that are completely off the radar, never get played live, but are just fantastic. Huh. They're fantastic songs. What was my next question here?
Well, I'll add one more thing to what you were just saying right now about the thing. Don't forget that at the time, it wasn't like you were being brought in as a hired bass player to play the song, because it was understood that whatever I was doing was really just a favor.
Okay.
Because I wasn't a hired bass player, because it would never, this whole thing of even getting credits and being in Wikipedia that you played on this and that, this came years and years later.
Yeah. But
I actually never expected for that to happen. It was just like this was something that just happened behind closed doors. And, I just did it as a friend just because I happened to be there.
So that brings the question. And if you did it as a friend, does that mean you were not paid for a studio session fee?
I don't think so. I don't think I was paid a studio session fee for that. I doubt it. But I don't know if this...
Is that a tough question?
It's a tough question because I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. I might have been. It's just so long ago. Right. But I just thought it wasn't like an official thing, like, send me your union form. We're doing this.
Right.
It was. And at the time, for me, it was just like, I wrote on the album. We're doing this, and it was an honor to play on a Kiss record. It wouldn't have been that important to me.
Right.
To be honest with you.
Before you said you had Kiss posters on your wall and that you were a fan and stuff. When you were listening to these songs, and this was really just at the beginning of, Ace and Peter having left. I mean, they had only been out of the band 3-4 years. Did you listen to these songs and think, wow, that's not Kiss? Or did you think, wow, this is better than Kiss? This is like new Kiss. What were your feelings if as a fan?
Let me see. Let me try to, I liked it. I was very supportive of the whole thing. So I was kind of in the mix. I was kind of already on the other side. I had been listening to a lot of the demos and hearing the progress, everything like that. So I thought it was great. I thought the album, the songs were great, and I thought the album was great. I didn't really compare it in my mind to, and I definitely didn't think, well, this is not Kiss.
Okay.
It just didn't enter my mind in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what a lot of fans sometimes don't understand is that when you're invested in a project and you're putting the songs together, and I've done that for other artists with other bands where I've worked on projects, is that these are the greatest songs you've ever heard in your life. Even if they're not, just because you've written them, it takes on that different, right? There's an attachment that you can't understand as an outside observer, right? And
that's right. You're in it. That's right.
Yeah, and you can't go back and say, oh, these songs suck or these songs, because they're not. They're your babies, in a sense.
That's it. That's it. And you have to think that you're making. I mean, let's face it. In our minds, when you're making a record, you're always thinking or hoping that whatever you're doing is better than what you did before. Or else it wouldn't be too good if you're like, I'm making this new album. I already know it's not as good as my last one. Then what are you doing?
You're in trouble. And it's funny because I did. Got a little static on the phone there. But we the last thing I did last year, I did this Kiss tribute album, and these artists sent me these songs that I compiled and I put together, and fans keep asking me, or people keep asking me, what's your favorite track on the tribute album? And it's like, well, they're all my favorite. That's why they're on the album. If it sucked, I would have left it off. Right? So let's just finish with the Kiss story, and then we'll get on to Crown of Thorns. But at the time also, Kiss had brought in Mark St. John, and he was having some troubles, and they didn't use him. They brought in Bruce Kulick on a couple of songs. How was that going down, all that stuff? Were you aware of any of that? Because, Alan Schwartzberg came in and did some drums when Eric Carr was the drummer. Like, there was all these moving parts. Was it sort of a chaotic scene, or was it just very seamless?
I got to be honest with you, Paul was a very relaxed guy.
Okay.
I never saw him stressed.
Okay.
If you wanted to, I'm just trying to think back in my mind of what that time period was. It's like, how some people are stressful and I can't believe it. Oh man, what a day! Well, this one, that one's leaving. I don't know what I'm going to do. He wasn't that kind of guy.
Okay.
He was just like, oh yeah, we're changing. This. Oh, we're not going to be with this manager anymore, so we're going to end that tomorrow.
So
I'll call you after. You know what I mean? It's like very, very casual about how everything went down. It seemed like him and Gene had a very, concrete plan of what they were going to do once they made decisions of what they were going to do. It seemed like it was pretty organized, and there was no hesitation.
Yeah.
And that's just how they are. I mean, Gene's
that's how you have to be successful, right? I mean, people who flounder and take forever to make decisions aren't successful. You have to be, this is right, this is wrong, let's move on. I mean, right?
That's exactly right. That's right, and that's how they are.
And that's why they've been around for 40 years, because
that's right.
That's I guess the obvious question is, you weren't expecting to have all these things known, and there wasn't Wikipedia back in the day, and there was a gentleman's understanding that you didn't run around telling the press that you had played on these songs. I mean, obviously there was no confidentiality agreements. You didn't sign stuff that said don't talk about this, right? I mean,
no, but it was the norm. I mean, this wasn't the only band. I mean, there's just back in those days, the band had a certain image, and probably we would have maybe done the same thing with Plasmatics or anything else. It's like people like to see a band as it was, and you didn't want to dilute it by, but I thought Gene was the bass player. Yeah, but there's this other guy. Oh, and there's this other guy. It just kind of messed up the picture. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely, because there's a brand. That's the one word that people don't like to hear, but every band is something Inc. It's Rolling Stones Inc., it's Kiss Inc., they're bands, and there's brands.
That's right. That's it.
Did you play on more than those 3 songs? I mean, those are the 3 that have sort of been leaked to the world, but are there more? Did you play on Heaven's on Fire?
No, I don't. No, those are the 3 that I remember. And we've got to remember, this is a very long time ago, Mitch.
Oh, yes.
It's like...
Under very different circumstances.
All these years of rock and roll, you don't remember every little detail. It's tough, So if maybe I played on something else, I could have. But I actually do not remember. I know it sounds foolish when I say that, maybe for a Kiss fan, but it's just the way we did it. I was there in the studio and just doing stuff. It was casual. It didn't end up in my credit list, like I said, so there's no reference to it. So it was supposedly, basically, to be erased from the mind.
Yeah, but it is funny that you mentioned that it sounds silly to a fan and stuff. And I think a lot of fans do think, well, if I had played on this song, I would know it. But that's not always how it works. Exactly. Sometimes you're in the studio and you're just jamming, or you're like, they put on Heaven's on Fire on playback, and you pick up a bass and you say, well, I think this would sound cool, but they don't use it. So it's hard sometimes to remember what they used, and you lose that kind of perspective. So let's look at Asylum.
And it wasn't like I said, it wasn't something that okay, now it's time, I know, so I'm going to write it down, and it's going to be what I sing, and I'm going to tell my friends. So, you have no record of it, basically.
Yeah, you don't. And they don't keep studio notes where they write down who picked up a bass all the time. There's no scorekeeper. I mean, it's not a baseball game.
That's right.
So we get on to Asylum. So I guess you're still hanging out with Paul. He's still friends with you. And he says, Jean, we got to do this again?
Yeah. He said basically when it came time to the next record, we just were like, they basically would say, okay. And at that time, I gotta see how much time there was. You probably know better than me. How much time was there between Animalize and Asylum?
Well, Animalize came out in 84, and Asylum came out in 85. So that's when they came out. Yeah. Now, you could record in November of 84 and release Animalize, and then record in January of 85 and receive,
Yeah, it was quick.
It was quick. It was like probably a 9-month turnaround by the time you're back in the studio writing again.
Yeah, and at the time, it wasn't something where everything got done in a month. They started preparing and get everything together quite a while before, because there was a lot involved. There was, especially we're talking the 80s now, so just to deal with hair, makeup, styling, clothes, videos, photos, and just all the preparation of the people that make this stuff and get everything together was just like, it was a constant working all year round.
It's funny that you mentioned. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned all that styling, because Asylum is when Kiss's style got a little bit out of control. With all the...
You think? Everybody's styling was out of control.
Yeah. You probably would have fit in really great with the mohawk on the Asylum album on stage, quite frankly. But
probably, actually, we were different but similar in ways, because these are reasons why we got along. We like the same thing, the same people who made certain, who were making clothes in New York, different, that whole wild 80s kind of a thing, which to us was total reality at the time. We didn't think it was outrageous. I might look at it now and say, wow, that was outrageous. But walking around with the mohawk and Paul the way he did and stuff that we wore, that was like every day. Go to pharmacy. It's like,
you thought you were styling.
That was it.
So
That's it.
You do 2 songs on Asylum. Now, that's what the Kiss sites and Wikipedia and all those wonderful things say. There's 2 songs, Who Wants to Be Lonely and All Night. I'll ask you right up front. Anything else?
No, that's it. For that. But meanwhile, Paul and I have, we did other stuff as well. So we were involved. He wrote something on the Blue X album with me.
That's right.
Okay. So there was, and then we worked on Shocker.
Yeah. Shocker.
That's right. We worked on Shocker.
That's a great song, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I love that song. I listened to it not too long ago. I was like, hey, this still rocks.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at something else. We did some other songs. I actually found old cassettes of other demos that we did, believe it or not. I'm trying to see if there's a year on this thing.
You have unreleased Kiss demo songs at home? Hold on. I'm going to have to hear those.
No, but it's not really Kiss songs, but it's things that Paul and I started to write, not necessarily, we didn't know for who, maybe to be pitched to another artist, but we enjoyed writing together, so we were just writing some other stuff, just in general, 3, 4 other things. So when it came to Asylum, he was just like, yeah, I'm going to start writing for the next record, so, when you get a chance, we have to, start getting into it. And then that's it. So we might have tried more ideas, and maybe it's 2 that came out, but I think it was just there. He had it planned. He was going to write with a couple of different people, so he kind of had it timed out. You know what I mean? Like you had, okay, I'm going to do this with Desmond. I want to do 1 with this. I want to do 2 with John. And that doesn't leave too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Who Wants to Be Lonely?
I'm kind of looking at the track.
Sorry, Who Wants to Be Lonely is a great song. Great song.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's another one that they should start playing again. Now, the other song in Asylum, All Night, well, okay, maybe they don't need to play that again, but no offense. No offense. But that was particularly written, I think, for MTV, that one, because it had sort of a innuendo shock kind of feeling to it, right?
Yep. I'm kind of looking at the track listing as we're talking. Yeah, that was two, and then he wrote some things with Desmond.
Yeah.
But he liked Desmond had a really interesting way of dealing with lyrics. He's a very good lyricist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was something that we would do at times. We'd even the stuff that we'd write, everything would almost be done, and Desmond would come in at the end and just make some little tweaks, just to give it, especially back in the 80s, like kind of clever lyrics and, things that had some interesting twists, and stuff like that. So, Desmond's a great writer.
Desmond's an absolutely fantastic writer. So, you end up on these 2 albums, and then, unless I'm mistaken, that's it. No more Jean on any more Kiss records. What happened there?
Well,
or am I missing
actually
something?
From there, that's right. How many more records did they actually do after that? Because after that, I kind of moved on to other stuff. Because now we're talking 85.
Right. But,
so from 85, I went to a different space. Because then I had my first solo hit.
Right. Okay. So it was more that you were busy doing your own thing rather than Kiss saying, "Well, it's been nice, Jean, but we're going to go somewhere else." That wasn't the case.
No.
Okay.
It wasn't that, because like I said, we continued. I mean, Shocker thing I mentioned, that didn't happen till like 89, 80 or something.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Same thing with Voodoo X.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That was 89.
So So I think what happened at that time is because 85. Then I got signed, Feel the Heat was a hit, and I was off to Europe. At that time, I ended up spending time in Sweden, for one thing. I was recording. I had a large studio, locked out for 2 years. So I was spending a lot of time over there. So that's for one thing. So I was barely in New York. And then I had 2 albums to make. So I was doing that. So I think I did the Ramones around that time. I did some other things. So I think at that point, it was schedule things. I just wasn't around. And I was just traveling around doing my own thing.
Now you go out as a solo artist, and you have drums along the Mohawk come out. How is it being in front of it, now being in charge? Now with the Plasmatics, Wendy was sort of the attraction, and with these Kiss albums, well, obviously Kiss is the attraction, but now you're putting yourself out there, out front. How does that change your approach? Are you more nervous? Are you scared? Are you more, confident? Are you like, I'm going to show the world?
Yeah, I was fine with it. That's where I wanted to be in the first place. I was just trying to get there, So it was, so finally, with Drums Along the Mohawk, it finally got there. But it's a hard road, because coming out of the Plasmatics, in 82 or whatever, 81 when I left them, nobody would sign me because you're from the Plasmatics,
Right.
You do Shock. If you want to blow up some cars, then we'll talk to you about signing you. But singing, forget that, So I had to go through a whole kind of process with the little Steven and this and that, where finally it wasn't until Drums Along the Wall that finally somebody heard the stuff and said, okay, I'm into this. And I was just about to leave America. I had an offer in Sweden from ABBA, believe it or not, to give me a singles deal. And I was just about to get on a plane, and there was a pretty big publicist at the time called Howard Bloom, who used to become a famous author. He said to me, Jean, before you go to Sweden, I'd like you to meet one guy named Gary Kurfirst. He's a big manager. He manages the Ramones, blah, 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 etc. I went to meet Gary Kurfirst, and he said, I heard your demos, a few songs that I did where I played all the instruments and blah, 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 and did everything myself. He said, I love it. He said, go to Sweden, don't sign any deal. I'll have you a deal within 3 weeks.
Wow.
I said, everybody's turned me down. There's no way you're going to have me a deal. He said, just go, and I'll call you. So I went to Sweden. Next thing you know, I get a phone call. He said, Richard Branson wants to meet you.
Wow.
I'll send you a ticket, and we're going to have lunch on his riverboat, and he's going to sign it. Wow. And that's it. Next thing you know, I was in London, Richard Branson, Virgin, and that was it. He said, I love the record. Okay, great. Welcome to the team. Let's go. And then that was the beginning.
It's funny you mentioned that you were in the Plasmatics and you sort of had to reestablish yourself. Did the Plasmatics sort of hurt your credibility after you left? Did people just sort of look at you and say, "Oh, he's from that band"? Was that
as a musician? Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Even though people will never realize this, but I'm telling you, the bass playing in the Plasmatics, and I've done a lot of bass playing with a lot of people. Little Steven, all these things, complicated things that you think. The Plasmatics bass playing is the most difficult of all.
Right. And
it
yet,
was fast, it was hard, intricate. You had to put riffs going at 200 miles per hour. But it gave me no credibility, musical credibility, especially being a bass player in the Plasmatics, so wanting to front and sing. That just makes no sense to anyone.
That's got to be hard to take, though, when you again, and I'll say the word again, you establish a brand, you've got a rabid fan base. You've done stuff with Kiss, and then all they do is they look at you and they go, "Oh, he's the guy with the mohawk in that band." That's really got to sort of drive a knife through your heart, I would think.
But it does. I mean, that's it. But that's just how people see things. We see it over and over again. We see it now. There's just certain things that people want to see. I hear artists say things. Oh, I mean, look at Kiss. And Kiss has the makeup back on. They didn't have makeup for a long time. They were like, we like Kiss with the makeup. Yeah. That's it. That's what it is. That's what you are. And eventually, they kind of, put the makeup back on. And it happens to so many artists that the brand is so powerful. It's Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band. Bruce will go on tour as Bruce Springsteen
Nobody cares.
Alone how many times, and he does, a quarter of the numbers, not even a quarter.
Yeah.
And then he'll turn around and all of a sudden, Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band. He could change everybody in the E Street Band and call it Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band, and he'll play stadiums. It's so strange and weird.
It really is.
How that thing goes.
Are you still getting that in 2014? Do people still look at you and say, "Oh, that's the Ramones guy," or has that finally sort of been pushed aside?
Well, no. I mean, I think from the combination of different things. I mean, not relative level. Let's put it this way. But I think that from the various things, Rex, Crown of Thorns, the solo records, and everything. Yeah, now people see you as a singer, and singer and artist, and it's pretty clear now. And I think that now they kind of see all the pieces together, and they think it's interesting that there's more depth to the whole thing. Because besides him doing that, same time, wow, he's written for him, he's written for some of our heroes, and he's produced for some of our heroes. So it's kind of an interesting package, I think, at this point. And and I'm going to move that forward, and then you try to get the most out of that, and the things together. It can get a little confusing sometimes, though, because some people only know you as this or that. There are a lot of Kiss fans that probably never heard my solo records.
I would probably say that's a fair bet. Now, speaking of solo records, because I remember you at the beginning, before we started recording, we said we'll do this for half an hour, because you've got stuff to do, and now we're at an hour. So let's quickly get to what you're doing. I mean, Crown of Thorns' last album was 2008. Is there more coming? Is there a solo album coming? Are you going to go write some more for NSynch, or are you going to go write?
There's a few things. I mean, for one thing, I always write. So, matter of fact, I wrote something last year. We had a good success with it. It's a group called Shiny. Very different. It's almost like an NSync, but from Asia. but it was number 1 in 7 countries. It was number 5 U.S. iTunes, number 2 Billboard World Charts. So I do that kind of writing as well, and that's more of a pop kind of electronic kind of pop. It's pretty intricate, but that's one thing. And then now I'm starting a new project with Micki from the first album of Crown of Thorns. Okay. We're doing something called Beauvoir Free, and we just signed with Frontiers.
Oh, nice. That's great.
Yeah, so we start a new album. Matter of fact, we're talking today, so he's coming down, and we're going to start recording June 1st.
Oh, that's great.
And we have to deliver that album by October 1st.
Let me ask you quickly about that album then. In 2013, you had started a Pledge Music campaign, and you withdrew it because you had to do other things. Is it those songs, or is this like completely new music, or what is it exactly?
Completely new.
Okay.
Because at the time that was for a Crown of Thorns best of with some bonus tracks.
Right.
But this is a Beauvoir Free record, so it's a little complicated because Micki was out of Crown of Thorns after the first album. Gotcha. So he went on to do his thing, and then we got a new guitar player. So I wanted to try to keep everything cool with everybody. And so we couldn't really do another Crown of Thorns thing with Micki because there's certain
legalities.
Right. Yeah, it's like, Tommy Lafferty from some of my other projects, the guitar player for Crown of Thorns, and I had to keep it separate. So we just decided to do it as a Beauvoir Free project because we did some shows together. We played Hard Rock Calling in 2010 together, and we've been doing some things together. So we think so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it, and it'll be all new songs, nothing anybody's heard. But it'll be in the spirit of what we did for the first Crown of Thorns record.
Gotcha.
There was just that era that we had working together there's like an interesting magic, and we like each other, we have fun together, so we just said let's try to get back into that head, and try to see what we come up with. So I'm doing that, and then
Is it going to be rock, hard rock, or is it going to be R&B? Where are we going musically?
No, it's a rock record. It's a rock
okay.
record. It's like definitely. It's I'd say more. You might even call it kind of a classic rock record.
Okay.
Kind of. It's
I like that.
Yeah, it's more of like a classic rock, melodic rock record. Of course, try to get great melodies in there, and but yet heavy, great solos. And just a good, solid melodic rock album is what we plan to make.
And that'll be out in the fall. And of course, I'm assuming you'll try to do a few shows here and there, as much as you can.
We plan, yeah. We're going to try to do as much as we can. We really want to tour, so we're going to work on that. And then, I'm playing. I just came back from Norway. I was in Norway 3 days ago. I did a show over there. It was myself and Dan Reed together, co-headlining, and that was fun. So I was in Norway for a few days. And then starting Monday, I have a guy from a band called The Union out of the UK, Peter Shoulder.
Okay.
Who's a very good singer, artist. He's flying in to come work with me for a week. So we're just gonna write and see what comes out. So it's kind of, it was his manager who used to own Planet Rock in the UK.
Right. And
I became friends, and he just thinks, you guys should just try something. I think there might be something there. So he's coming in. So I'm constantly doing that.
Something.
At the same time, I'm executive producing a television show for SBS Discovery. That's a whole other thing. But it's also music-based, so it's,
That's great. Let me end with this question then today. Do you prefer to be a songwriter, a performer, or a producer?
Performer.
Okay. And
I would say I like all of them, but you did say do you prefer?
I did. That's exactly
you wanted one.
I wanted one. That was the exact choice. And listen, I'm going to assume that you chose performer because there is such an energy you get from connecting with an audience and being on stage.
There's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it. I haven't been doing enough of it, and I plan to do a lot more of it because I realize that's really where the passion is, and it's the most fulfilling. It's all fulfilling, but to me, that's on the top of the list.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree, and I think that's why fans keep going to live shows because there's just such a connection that goes on. When you get a good artist putting on a great show, there's really nothing better. I mean, honestly, it's it's
it's magical. It's magical, and you miss out on it sometimes. Like I said, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of songwriting. I do a lot of that sometimes, and it's a lot of work. You'll work for weeks, working with people every day and night, and of course you never know what gets cut and what doesn't get cut, and everything else. And producing, it's a lot of work as well. I mean, I do it, but it's all a lot of work. But the performing, and it's an instant. You get something back instantly.
Yeah.
The minute you play that first chord, you're getting something back.
Well, and that's one thing people might not realize is that you step on the stage and they cheer. It's right away. But when you produce and you sit in a studio for 9 months, 1 year, year and a half, and you've polished off 10 songs, it gets released. You don't hear anything. It's just released, and you're like, oh, really?
That's right. That's it. It has changed. It doesn't have the same. It's true. It's a little bit different.
It's a little bit different.
To be.
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
There's no doubt. So there you go. So of course everybody should go see jeanbeauvoir.com and check out the new project
and on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I hope by going double time that I haven't ruined your entire afternoon.
I'm fine. I did a little move of a couple of things quickly to work things out. I'm fine. So it's all good. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, I enjoyed too. So Jean, as we say all the time, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Pas de problème, c'est mon plaisir.
And we'll do it again. On le fera une autre fois. We'll do it again.
La prochaine fois. That's
À la prochaine. Merci.
Okay, merci.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And there you go. There was Jean Beauvoir. Of course, obviously, I've got to thank Jean. So there you go, Gordon. What did you think of that?
That's why they have him there. He's a pro. He sounds great.
Yeah.
Kiss fans. I don't know if they at the time they didn't realize, they had these added musicians, and Jean was there and captured. Like a guy like that comes into the studio with the guys like Kiss. And doesn't go any veer off like Jean Beauvoir. He goes in to add to Kiss, not highlight Jean Beauvoir.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even know it. That's the sign of a pro. That's
really is.
Because you had Vinnie Vincent in there, and Vinnie cranked and overplayed, and it was the Vinnie Vincent show. With Kiss.
Yeah, that was a very, very bad show.
Yeah, so I'm talking album-wise and everything. It was like he came into the studio and then it's the Vinnie Vincent show. It was him going, and all the riffs and the speed metal riffs and this and that. When you go in and do these bands, you got to have chemistry with these guys. You got to. Me as a keyboard player, when I went into Angel, it wasn't Gordon Gebert. I was trying to get. The whatchamacallit, Jafria. I was like, I was kind of like, there was a model I had to follow, and I couldn't stray from it that much. I mean, it was my kind of stuff,
right.
And that's why I could add to it. But there was no Gordon Gebert doing solos, and so I had it when we did live all the Angel, all the material. I had to pretty much cover Greg Jafria's licks and then add to it. If you see the live videos of playing, but that's Jean was great. That's a consummate musician there. He comes in and does exactly what is needed.
Yeah, and the other thing there are two things I find amazing about all these artists that came in and played with Kiss, or the guys that played with Alice Cooper, or whoever, these ghost musicians, is the loyalty they have to the bands because they've done this stuff and it looks good on a CV, but they're smarter than that. They keep it hidden. They keep it under wraps because they know, they understand the bigger picture. But the other thing that I find remarkable about Jean in particular is you look at his CV. He's got the Ramones on it. He's got John Waite, Glenn Hughes, NSynch, Bruce Springsteen, the Ramones, or did I already say them? Little Steven. And whenever somebody sits down with him, they go, "So you played on a Kiss album?" I mean, that's the power of Kiss.
Right. I'm gonna add two guys off the top of my head that because I know them. Is Anton Fig.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
he had to keep his mouth shut, and he did all the drum tracks. And another guy who's kind of not many people know. I'll say the name, but he's done so much. Steve Hunter.
Yeah, of course, with Alice Cooper, and of course
with Alice Cooper, right?
And apparently he played on Destroyer. So
he played on Destroyer, and he played with when Aerosmith needed him. He played Train Kept a Rollin'.
Oh, that's right. He played on that Aerosmith, the solo on that Get Your Wings album.
Right.
Yeah, no, these great guys. You know, and by the way, Anton Fig and Will Lee, who are both with David Letterman's band, are two guys that I would definitely love to sit down with, because I don't think they've ever told their story, at least not Anton's story of how he became the guy on Dynasty and how they brought him back for Unmasked. I would love to put him under the microscope for a good, hour.
Yeah, I'd see if I can get a hold of Anton. I haven't been in contact in a long time.
They're tough, but someday I'd love to do that.
You know how it is. I try to throw guys your way, and it's tough to get the schedule down, but we'll see if they're available. Sometimes it's a matter of luck, or you know that.
It absolutely is a matter of luck, and a lot of times it's a matter of who you know and how you can sort of get that hookup done. But, listen, David Letterman's retiring, so maybe Anton will
Anton will have some time to do it.
Yeah, but you know what? We both know that's not true. When you're that talented, people are calling you all day long. Come play on my album. So
play on my album. Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, I mean, Anton's not going to be out of work.
No, never, and he shouldn't be. He's
a great guy and a fantastic drummer. I've told you many times I've been blessed playing with so many great drummers. Jamie. Well, I never played with Jamie Oldacre. I know Jamie. Anton Fig, all these guys, Liberty DeVito and everything. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable guy. So there you go. So let's wrap up this episode. So that's this is the latest episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon, and I'm your host, part of the Talking Metal Digital Network, which also includes the Talking Metal podcast, the Mars of Talks podcast, and Talking Rock. There you go, Gordon. It was painless, wasn't it?
Great episode. I had fun.
Yeah.
Have me back, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it would be interesting to have you back, not just to talk about Kiss and Ace, but to also just get your input on general rock stuff. I mean, you've done more than just Kiss and Ace, right?
Yeah, I know. Everybody thinks I'm like a one-trick pony here, but no, I've had and still have a great career. So and many friends in the business and. It's good. In fact, I'm going to be seeing. I'm going to plug. I got to give a plug to John Regan and Todd.
Yeah.
Todd Howard. I'm going to see them next week. I don't know when this broadcast. May 17th in Helsinki, Finland. I'm going to Helsinki to the Kiss Expo.
Yeah.
And John Regan's going to be there with Todd Howard with their new band